In today's video, we're diving into the timeless wisdom of Stoicism to help you build unshakable discipline and take control of your life. Discover the ancient practices that have helped philosophers and leaders stay focused and resilient, no matter the challenge. Stick around till the end for actionable steps you can start using today. Let's unlock the Stoic way to discipline together. Number 1. Maintain consistency in routine. Maintaining consistency and sticking to a routine can feel like one of the most challenging aspects of building self-discipline. But here's the thing, it's also one of the most powerful tools you can have in your arsenal. It's like that dependable backbone that keeps everything else upright. Think of it this way, without some level of consistency, all those big plans, goals, and ambitions you've set for yourself tend to drift, like a ship without a rudder. Discipline without a routine is like a recipe without a method, lots of potential, but no structure to bring it all together. Now, when people hear the word routine, they might think of something rigid, dull, and lifeless. A lot of folks picture monotonous schedules that drain the joy out of life. But that's not what this is about. The Stoics weren't advocating for a life of robotic repetition, they believed in living intentionally. And that's what a good routine is, it's about choosing actions that align with what you value and want in your life, then doing them consistently. It's about setting up a flow that supports your goals, rather than working against them. And the beauty of it? You can build it to fit the life you want. Starting small is key here. It's tempting to overhaul your whole day at once, but that's often a recipe for burnout. Instead, begin by weaving in just a few habits that really matter to you. A couple of non-negotiables, maybe it's journaling at the start of your day, or dedicating 20 minutes to something that fuels your growth. Make them easy, almost too easy to skip. The goal isn't to be perfect right away, but to establish a rhythm, something that gently pulls you forward even on days when motivation is nowhere to be found. And that's where the magic of consistency kicks in. Motivation is fleeting, we know that. Some days, you'll feel on top of the world and others, not so much. But when you've got a solid routine, those feelings don't derail you. Instead, the routine acts like a default setting, something you fall back on without thinking too much about it. You show up, you do the thing, and you keep moving. Over time, this builds momentum. It's like compounding interest, small, regular actions that seem insignificant in the moment but snowball into something powerful over time. Of course, this doesn't mean every day will feel the same. Routines are flexible, they're adaptable, but they also give you a sturdy framework. Think of it like scaffolding, it supports the structure as you build. You can switch things up and add new elements as you grow, but the foundation is always there to keep you grounded. Now, there will be times when sticking to your routine feels like a chore, when the excitement fades and it starts to feel like a grind. This is where Stoic philosophy can be a real game changer. The Stoics remind us that discipline isn't about doing what's fun or easy, it's about doing what's necessary. In those moments when the routine feels heavy, it helps to remind yourself why you're doing it in the first place. Your routine isn't just busy work, it's a tool you've chosen to help you become the person you want to be. And if you slip up, if you miss a day, don't sweat it. The key is not to throw in the towel. One misstep doesn't ruin all the work you've put in. The Stoics weren't about perfection, they understood that being human means you're going to stumble sometimes. What matters is how quickly you get back on track. The routine is always there waiting for you, like an old friend. It's not about never faltering, it's about showing up again and again. So, in essence, maintaining consistency and routine isn't about locking yourself into a rigid schedule that you hate. It's about creating a foundation that supports you, even when life gets chaotic, even when you don't feel like it. It's about giving yourself the gift of structure, so you can focus on what really matters, becoming the best version of yourself, day by day. Number 2, avoid distractions and temptations. Avoiding distractions and temptations is like guarding the gates to your mind. In the fast-paced world we live in, distractions are everywhere, and it's easy to get swept up in them if you're not careful. Phones ping with notifications, social media lures you in with endless scrolling, and even your own thoughts can become distractions if you let them run wild. It feels like you're in a constant battle to stay focused on what matters. But what if you could create a little bubble of calm around yourself where distractions don't get to you as easily? That's where the Stoic mindset comes in. Stoics believed in controlling what's within your power and letting go of what's not. Distractions? You have power over them. Temptations? You can resist them. It's about recognizing when your attention is being pulled away and then making a conscious choice to pull it back. Imagine you're in the middle of working on something important, but a notification pops up, trying to grab your attention. In that split second, you can either give in and check it, or you can acknowledge it's there and keep doing what you're doing. The key is to train yourself to pause in that moment, breathe, and ask, is this worth my time right now? Distractions are sneaky because they often seem harmless. One quick scroll through social media won't hurt, right? But that quick scroll can turn into minutes, then hours. Temptations, too, can be disguised as small, harmless indulgences. A Stoic knows that giving into these distractions and temptations doesn't align with their long-term goals. And that's what discipline is really about, keeping your eyes on the bigger picture. Part of avoiding distractions is knowing where they come from and creating environments that don't encourage them. If you know your phone distracts you, put it in another room while you work. If your mind wanders easily, set shorter, more focused periods of work. It's not about rigidly controlling every second of your day, but about removing unnecessary interruptions. Every time you remove a distraction, you're creating more space for focus and growth. There's also the temptation to give into easy rewards. A Stoic would remind themselves that immediate gratification is often fleeting. The sugary snack or extra hour of sleep may feel good now, but will it really matter in the long run? By practicing the art of delaying gratification, you strengthen your self-discipline. It's like building a muscle. Each time you say no to a temptation, you're making it easier to do so again. You don't have to be perfect. Even the most disciplined person will face moments where they get distracted or give in to temptation. The Stoic approach isn't about perfection but progress. It's about recognizing when you've strayed and gently guiding yourself back on track. It's not a failure to be tempted, it's a victory every time you choose not to give in. At the heart of it all is this: you get to choose where your attention goes. You get to decide what matters. When you actively avoid distractions and temptations, you're showing yourself that you value your time and energy. You're proving that your goals matter more than a fleeting urge or passing fancy. That's real discipline. And over time, it becomes second nature, just like the Stoics intended. Number 3, develop a sense of inner calm through meditation. Developing a sense of inner calm through meditation might sound like a simple task, but the impact it can have on your self-discipline is anything but ordinary. Meditation is like training your mind to sit still, even when the world around you is spinning in 100 directions. It's not just about sitting cross-legged and closing your eyes, though that's part of it, but it's also about tuning into the present moment and learning to let go of the noise that clouds your focus. Think of meditation as a way to declutter your mind. We all know that feeling of overwhelm, when your to-do list is longer than your patience, and your mind feels like it's jumping from one thing to the next without a moment's rest. It's in these moments when discipline starts to crumble. You might find it harder to resist distractions, to stick to your goals, or to follow through on what you've promised yourself. Meditation, though, gives you a chance to hit the pause button. By focusing on your breath or a specific mantra, you bring your awareness back to the present, quieting that mental chaos. Here's the thing, meditation isn't just about feeling calm for those 10 or 15 minutes you're sitting in silence. The real magic happens when you take that calm out into your daily life. With regular practice, you begin to notice that the same stressors and distractions that used to shake you up don't have the same power over you anymore. You become a little more unshakable, a little more grounded. That's where the Stoic approach really ties in. It's not about avoiding chaos or difficulty, but about cultivating a mind that remains steady in the face of it. When you make meditation a part of your routine, you're essentially strengthening your ability to stay in control, to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. And this, in essence, is the foundation of discipline. You start to notice when you're slipping into old habits or getting lost in thoughts that don't serve you. Instead of getting swept away, you can take a breath, pause, and make a conscious choice to stay aligned with your goals. It's about mastering that moment of decision, which is where discipline either wins or fails. Also, it's important to realize that meditation doesn't require perfection. Your mind will wander, probably a lot at first, but that's not a failure. The real discipline comes in gently bringing your focus back, over and over again. That's the same kind of mental muscle you'll need when building self-discipline in other areas of your life. Every time you resist the urge to give up on a tough task or avoid a distraction, it's like bringing your mind back to meditation. You're training yourself to stay steady, even when it would be easier to drift away. Meditation, then, becomes a daily practice in controlling the mind, which is the first step in controlling your actions. Over time, you'll find that sense of inner calm seeping into other aspects of your life. You'll make better decisions, stay more focused on your goals, and most importantly, build a stronger sense of self-discipline. So, meditation isn't just about relaxation, it's about training your mind to stay cool, calm, and collected in the face of whatever life throws at you. When you can master that, discipline follows naturally. Number 4, train yourself to accept criticism without ego. Learning how to accept criticism without letting your ego get in the way is like training a muscle. It takes time, effort, and a whole lot of patience. It's not something that happens overnight. But if you can master this, you'll unlock a deeper level of self-discipline that most people struggle with. At first, criticism stings, right? It's like a hit to the gut, especially when you're proud of what you've done. We all like to believe that we're doing things right, that we've got it all figured out. So when someone comes along and points out a flaw or tells us we could do better, the natural reaction is to get defensive. You might feel that surge of irritation rising up. Your brain starts forming arguments, excuses, justifications. Your ego flares up, wanting to protect itself. It's a knee-jerk reaction. We all feel it. But here's where the Stoic mindset comes into play. The Stoics believe that the only things within our control are our thoughts and actions. The opinions of others? Completely outside our control. This is key when it comes to criticism. The Stoic way teaches us to pause when that criticism comes our way. Instead of letting the ego take over and launch into defense mode, we stop and reflect. Is there truth in what's being said? Even if the delivery is harsh, is there something valuable to learn? Here's where it gets tricky, though. The ego loves to take things personally. It loves to make criticism feel like a personal attack, as if someone pointing out a mistake means that you are fundamentally flawed. But that's just not the case. One of the most powerful things you can do is detach yourself from the feedback. Instead of seeing it as a judgment on who you are, look at it as neutral information. That's all it is, information that can help you grow if you let it. This doesn't mean you have to accept every piece of criticism as gospel truth. Not all feedback is helpful, and some of it can be misguided. But that's where the Stoic practice of discernment comes in. You can evaluate criticism without attaching your ego to it. Take what's useful, leave the rest, and keep moving. Now, accepting criticism doesn't just strengthen your discipline, it also builds resilience. When you're not constantly guarding your ego, you become more open to learning. The more you train yourself to listen to feedback, the less those critiques will bother you over time. You become tougher, not in the sense of shutting down emotionally, but in the sense of being less rattled by outside opinions. It's like building a thicker skin, but without becoming closed off or bitter. And there's a kind of freedom in that, isn't there? When you're no longer held hostage by your ego, you can start to see criticism for what it is, an opportunity. Every time someone gives you feedback, even if it's not delivered in the nicest way, you have the chance to grow. You can improve, adjust, sharpen your skills. That's the real win here, not proving that you're right, but constantly getting better. Of course, this doesn't happen naturally. You'll catch yourself slipping into old habits, wanting to defend yourself, feeling that twinge of pride. That's normal. But the more you practice, the easier it gets. Over time, you'll start to crave feedback because you'll see how much it helps you evolve. You'll develop a mindset that's focused on improvement, rather than validation. In the end, training yourself to accept criticism without letting your ego run the show is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. It's tough at first, no doubt. But with practice, you'll find it's incredibly liberating. It shifts your focus from worrying about how others see you to focusing on how you can grow. And isn't that what true self-discipline is all about? Continually refining yourself, bit by bit, without letting the noise get in the way? Number 5. Break tasks into manageable steps. When you're faced with a big task, it can feel like standing at the foot of a mountain, staring up at this massive thing you have to climb. It's daunting, overwhelming, and can make you question if you even want to start. But here's the thing, you don't have to tackle the whole mountain at once. Instead, you can take it step by step, breaking that big task into smaller, more manageable pieces. This is a simple yet powerful strategy that aligns perfectly with the Stoic approach to discipline. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control in the present moment. So, when a task feels too big, zoom in. Narrow your focus. Instead of worrying about the entire thing, ask yourself, what's the first step I can take? By breaking it down into smaller chunks, each step becomes less intimidating. You're no longer trying to conquer the mountain, you're just taking the next step, one foot in front of the other. When you start to look at tasks this way, they become less overwhelming and more achievable. Suddenly, the enormity of the task shrinks. You're not trying to do everything at once, but rather, you're moving forward in a focused, deliberate way. The smaller steps might not seem significant at first, but they add up. And before you know it, you're further along than you thought possible. One of the challenges we face when trying to be disciplined is the urge to procrastinate, especially when a task feels like too much. It's easy to think, I'll do this later when I have more time or energy. But breaking tasks down helps counter that urge. Small steps are easier to start. When something feels manageable, you're more likely to begin right away rather than put it off. And starting is often the hardest part. The Stoics believed in being present, working with what's in front of you, and not getting lost in thoughts about the future or the past. By breaking tasks into smaller steps, you're staying grounded in the now. You're not worrying about everything that still needs to be done, you're just focused on what you can do right now, in this moment. It's practical and calming at the same time. Another benefit of breaking things down is that it gives you a sense of accomplishment along the way. Each small step you complete is a mini victory. And those little wins? They add fuel to your motivation. It feels good to check something off, even if it's a tiny part of the whole. It builds momentum, and once you have that momentum, it becomes easier to keep going. Of course, it's important to remind yourself that this approach isn't about rushing. Stoicism isn't about hurrying through life. It's about patience and persistence. When you break tasks down, you give yourself permission to move at a steady pace. You're not rushing to finish everything all at once, but you're also not standing still, paralyzed by the size of what you need to do. Instead, you're making consistent, steady progress. And that's where real discipline is built. In the end, breaking tasks into manageable steps is about giving yourself the tools to succeed. It's about working smart, not hard. Each small step may seem insignificant on its own, but when combined, they create something powerful. So, next time you're faced with a big task, remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Just take the next step. That's all it takes. Number 6. Build mental toughness through physical discipline. Building mental toughness through physical discipline is a game changer. There's something about pushing your body that sharpens the mind in a way few other things can. It's like a direct line between the challenges you set for your physical self and the strength that forms in your mind. The more you put yourself through physically, the more resilient you become mentally. And that's really what discipline is about, right? It's not just being able to resist temptation or stick to a plan. It's about being mentally tough enough to keep going, even when everything in you wants to quit. Physical discipline can be anything that demands effort, a workout, a run, or even just sticking to a simple routine you've committed to. The important part isn't the activity itself, but how you engage with it. Every time you push through that last rep when your muscles are screaming, or when you lace up your shoes to get moving even though you don't feel like it, you're doing more than just challenging your body. You're teaching your mind that it can endure discomfort, that it can handle the grind. And once your mind gets used to the idea of pushing past limits, it gets easier to do the same in other areas of life. What's fascinating is how closely connected the mind and body are when it comes to discipline. When you challenge your body, you're also forcing your mind to grow. The moment you start feeling that burn in your muscles or the fatigue settling in, your mind jumps in with excuses. It'll tell you, that's enough for today, or you've done enough, just stop. But here's where the real magic happens. When you choose to ignore that voice and keep going, you're building mental toughness. You're training your brain to handle discomfort, to push through the I can't moments and transform them into I will moments. And this translates directly into everyday life. If you can endure physical challenges, then you can endure mental ones too. That's why physical discipline is such a key part of developing overall self-discipline. When you get used to dealing with physical discomfort, it becomes easier to face emotional or mental discomfort. It builds a kind of resilience, a toughness that says, I've been here before, and I know I can handle this. The body may be tired, but the mind knows what it's capable of, and that's the real reward. The Stoics often talked about preparing for adversity, and this is exactly what physical discipline does. It conditions you to handle the hard stuff. You start to realize that discomfort is temporary and that you are stronger than you think. The more you practice this, the less scary it becomes to take on new challenges, to step outside of your comfort zone, or to stick with something even when it's not fun anymore. That's the heart of discipline, showing up, putting in the work, and doing it again tomorrow, no matter how you feel. Another thing to consider is that physical discipline doesn't have to be extreme. It's not about punishing your body or pushing yourself to the brink every day. It's about consistency. It's about making small, intentional choices that, over time, build into something powerful. Whether it's getting up early, committing to a daily exercise, or just sticking to a routine, it's these small acts of physical discipline that add up to mental strength. And once you've got that mental toughness, sticking to your goals, resisting temptations, and staying the course becomes second nature. In the end, physical discipline is like the training ground for your mind. Every time you push yourself physically, you're telling your mind that it's capable of more than it thinks. You're building a mindset that can handle challenges and push through tough moments. It's not just about becoming stronger physically, it's about creating the mental toughness that forms the foundation of true self-discipline. Number 7, embrace humility in lifelong learning. Embracing humility and committing to lifelong learning might just be one of the most overlooked elements of self-discipline. Yet, it's fundamental. You see, humility isn't about thinking less of yourself or downplaying your strengths. It's about recognizing that no matter how much you've achieved or learned, there's always more. There's always room to grow, always space for improvement. The moment you think you've arrived, that you know it all, you're stuck. You've stopped evolving. And that's a dangerous place to be. Now, let's talk about why humility matters so much when it comes to discipline. Discipline isn't just about forcing yourself to follow a strict schedule or resist temptation. It's also about having the awareness to recognize where you're lacking and the openness to learn from others. Humility is the key that unlocks that door. If you think you already know everything, if your ego is running the show, you're not going to see the gaps in your knowledge or your behavior. You'll resist feedback. You'll shy away from situations where you might look inexperienced or unskilled. That's not discipline, that's fear dressed up as pride. The Stoics had this incredible understanding that wisdom is never fully attained. You're always in the process of becoming wiser, never actually arriving at some final destination. It's like a journey without a finish line. When you embrace humility, you accept this reality. You acknowledge that there's something to learn from every experience, from every person you meet, even from your own mistakes. Especially from your own mistakes. Lifelong learning doesn't mean you need to be constantly cramming new facts into your brain or signing up for courses left and right. It's more about adopting a mindset of curiosity, of seeing every moment as an opportunity to grow. Whether it's reading, reflecting, having conversations, or observing how you react in certain situations, these are all chances to learn. Every day brings with it something new, some nugget of wisdom, but you'll only catch it if you're paying attention. And you'll only pay attention if you're humble enough to realize you don't already have it all figured out. Now, let's be honest. Lifelong learning can feel uncomfortable at times, especially when you're confronted with the fact that there's something you don't know or can't do. It's humbling, in the truest sense of the word. But here's the thing, that discomfort is where growth happens. Every time you step into that space of not knowing, you stretch yourself a little bit more. You develop the resilience and patience that are essential parts of discipline. Humility is like a doorway into that discomfort, and discipline is the willpower to keep walking through it, again and again. The beauty of the Stoic approach is that it makes the journey itself the focus, not some end goal. When you accept that you'll never be finished, never fully perfected, you stop putting pressure on yourself to get everything right all the time. Instead, you can focus on just getting better, bit by bit, day by day. Humility helps you be kinder to yourself when you fall short because you're not expecting perfection. You're expecting progress. And progress? That's what discipline is all about. So, to embrace humility in lifelong learning is to let go of the ego-driven need to be seen as the best or the expert. It's about becoming a student of life, always open to new lessons, even when they come in ways you didn't expect or particularly want. And that openness? That's what sets you free to truly develop self-discipline. It's not about locking yourself into rigid habits, but growing into the kind of person who welcomes challenges, learns from failures, and keeps evolving. In the end, humility isn't weakness, it's strength. And lifelong learning isn't a burden, it's a gift. Together, they form a powerful foundation for real discipline, the kind that lasts. Because if you're always willing to learn, you'll never stop improving. And if you're humble enough to keep going, no matter how much you've already accomplished, you'll always find ways to become better than you were yesterday. That's the Stoic way. That's self-discipline. Number 8, set clear, rational goals. Setting clear, rational goals is like giving yourself a roadmap to follow. Without it, you're just wandering, hoping you'll end up where you want to be. But here's the catch. The goals you set can't just be any goals. They need to be rational, grounded in reality, and aligned with who you are. The Stoics believed in using reason as a guiding force in life, and when it comes to discipline, that starts with having goals that make sense. When you sit down to think about what you want to achieve, it's easy to get caught up in fantasies of grand success or perfection. But Stoicism teaches us to avoid getting lost in unrealistic desires. Instead, focus on goals that are within your control, that you can realistically achieve with effort and focus. This doesn't mean you should aim low or settle for less, it means you need to be practical. What do you want? And more importantly, what are the steps you can take to get there? If your goals are too vague or too lofty, they won't guide you. They'll just hang over you like a cloud of uncertainty. Clear goals give you direction. Without them, you're likely to drift or find yourself constantly changing course, never really getting anywhere. You might work hard, but if you don't know what you're working toward, that effort doesn't go very far. The Stoic approach to discipline starts with defining what it is you want to achieve, and making sure that goal is rational and within your control. If it depends too much on external factors, you're setting yourself up for frustration. Stoics remind us to focus on what we can influence, not on what we can't. Once you've set your goal, break it down. Don't just say, "I want to accomplish X." Ask yourself, what does accomplishing X actually look like? What are the smaller pieces that make up the whole? That's the beauty of having a clear goal. It becomes a series of steps, a process. And the clearer your goal, the easier it is to map out that process. Each step becomes something you can take action on, something tangible. You start to see progress, even if it's slow, and that progress builds your discipline. Now, let's talk about rationality. Sometimes, we set goals that aren't really aligned with what we value. Maybe they're based on what we think we should want, or what other people expect of us. But deep down, they don't reflect who we are or what we actually care about. Stoicism encourages us to be brutally honest with ourselves. Are your goals rooted in reality? Are they aligned with your values? If they're not, you'll find it hard to stay disciplined. You might even start resenting the work because it feels like you're chasing something that doesn't matter to you. Discipline doesn't come from forcing yourself to grind away at something you don't believe in. It comes from having a clear vision of what you want and why it matters. When you know exactly what you're working toward and can see the logic behind it, discipline starts to feel less like a burden and more like a natural part of the process. You're not struggling against yourself, you're working with a purpose. So, take the time to set clear, rational goals. Don't rush this part. Think it through. What do you want, and why do you want it? Is it realistic? Is it within your control? Once you have that clarity, you'll find that sticking to the path becomes easier. You won't be swayed by distractions or temptations, because your goal will be clear, your reasons sound, and your discipline steady. That's the Stoic way. Number 9. Reflect daily on progress and failures. Reflecting daily on your progress and failures isn't just about keeping track of what you did or didn't accomplish. It's a powerful way to stay grounded and honest with yourself. It's like taking a step back to look at the bigger picture, while also zooming in on the details that really matter. Each day brings lessons, and when you take time to reflect on both your wins and your stumbles, you're sharpening your awareness of where you're growing, and where you need to step up your game. Let's face it, we're all moving through life at 1,000,000 miles per hour. It's easy to get caught up in the flow, just doing things without stopping to think about why you're doing them or if they're even working for you. That's where reflection comes in. It's like hitting the pause button, allowing you to take stock of the day. Did you stick to your commitments? Did you lose focus somewhere along the way? By reviewing these things, you're giving yourself a chance to acknowledge your efforts and course correct where needed. It's not about beating yourself up when things don't go as planned, it's about learning from the experience. Here's the cool part: when you make daily reflection a habit, you start to see patterns. Maybe you notice that certain distractions keep popping up, pulling you away from your goals. Or you might realize that on the days you meditate or stick to a morning routine, your self-discipline feels stronger. These insights are gold. They help you understand yourself better, which in turn makes it easier to adjust your approach. Reflection isn't just looking at the past, it's setting yourself up for a better tomorrow. But let's not sugarcoat it, reflection can also be uncomfortable. It forces you to confront your failures head-on, which isn't always fun. It's tempting to sweep mistakes under the rug or avoid thinking about the times you fell short. However, it's in these moments of discomfort that you can grow the most. When you face your failures without judgment, you take away their power. You start to see them for what they are, lessons. Every time you reflect on a failure, you're essentially turning it into a tool for your own development. That's where real discipline is born, not in avoiding failure, but in learning from it and using it to get stronger. On the flip side, reflecting on your successes is just as important. It's easy to get caught up in the chase for more and more progress, but if you don't take time to recognize what you've achieved, it's like running a race without ever celebrating the finish lines you cross. Reflection gives you that moment to say, "Hey, I did that. I stuck to my plan. I made progress." These small victories are fuel for your discipline. They remind you that all the effort, all the hard choices, are worth it. Now, how do you actually reflect? It doesn't have to be complicated. You could jot down a few notes in a journal or just sit quietly for a few minutes at the end of the day. Ask yourself questions like, what went well today? Where did I slip? How can I improve tomorrow? It doesn't need to be an intense, hour-long process, just a few moments of mindful review. What matters is the consistency. Over time, this simple practice builds a level of self-awareness that's crucial for anyone serious about developing discipline. In essence, daily reflection is about being real with yourself. It's about staying in tune with where you're at, celebrating your wins, and learning from your missteps. It's a way of staying accountable without relying on anyone else to do it for you. And the more you reflect, the more in control you feel over your decisions, your habits, and ultimately, your life. So, take a few moments each day to reflect, and watch how it strengthens not just your discipline but your entire mindset. Number 10. Prioritize long-term benefits over short-term pleasures. Prioritizing long-term benefits over short-term pleasures is like playing the ultimate game of chess with your own mind. It's all about seeing the bigger picture, resisting those tempting little distractions that promise instant gratification. You know the ones, scrolling endlessly through your feed, binge-watching the latest show, or diving into that dessert just because it's there. They all offer a quick hit of pleasure, but they often come at a cost. Here's the kicker: the Stoics understood that these fleeting pleasures can be seductive. They pull at you, whispering sweet nothings about how satisfying they'll feel in the moment. But the truth is, those moments are just that, fleeting. They rarely lead to anything meaningful. Instead, the Stoics emphasized looking beyond the moment, asking yourself, what's the real payoff here? This is where the power of self-discipline comes into play. When you start shifting your focus from immediate satisfaction to long-term gain, everything changes. It's like flipping a switch in your brain. You begin to see those short-term pleasures for what they are, distractions that can derail you from your goals. Imagine if you put all that energy you'd normally spend chasing after instant gratification into something that truly aligns with your values and aspirations. The results could be transformative. Now, this doesn't mean you have to cut out all the fun stuff. Life is meant to be enjoyed. But it's about finding that balance, understanding when it's okay to indulge and when to hold back. Think of it as training your brain to recognize the difference between what feels good in the moment and what will feel good in the long run. This isn't just a one-time decision, it's an ongoing practice. It's also important to acknowledge that prioritizing long-term benefits often involves discomfort. Yes, it can be tough to resist that immediate pleasure. Sometimes, you'll feel like you're missing out, like you're denying yourself something that everyone else seems to enjoy. But here's where the Stoic perspective really shines. They teach us that discomfort can be a powerful teacher. When you lean into that discomfort, you start to cultivate resilience. You learn to withstand the pull of short-term pleasures and to appreciate the greater rewards that come from patience and persistence. Think of it like this: when you choose long-term benefits, you're essentially investing in your future self. You're making choices today that will pay off tomorrow. This might mean putting in the work now, whether it's studying, exercising, or even just taking a moment to reflect instead of diving into distractions. Over time, those small, consistent choices build up, creating a foundation of discipline that supports you in ways that immediate pleasures never could. Another aspect to consider is the satisfaction that comes from achieving long-term goals. There's something profoundly rewarding about working towards something and finally seeing it come to fruition. It's not just the end result, it's the journey, the growth, and the lessons learned along the way. Those moments of achievement have a depth that a fleeting pleasure just can't touch. So, the next time you're faced with a choice between the quick thrill and the steady path, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what will this choice bring me in the long run? It's a small but powerful shift in mindset. When you start prioritizing those long-term benefits, you begin to cultivate a sense of purpose and direction. You're not just drifting through life, you're steering your ship towards something meaningful. In the end, embracing the Stoic way of prioritizing long-term benefits over short-term pleasures is all about learning to be patient with yourself. It's about understanding that the road may be longer, but the rewards are richer and far more satisfying. Each time you choose the enduring over the ephemeral, you're reinforcing your self-discipline, training your mind to focus on what truly matters. And isn't that what it's all about? Building a life that's not just filled with fleeting moments but with lasting fulfillment and growth. Thanks for joining me in this exploration of self-discipline through the lens of Stoicism. Remember, building self-discipline is a journey, not a destination. By embracing the Stoic principles we've discussed today, you can cultivate resilience and focus in your daily life. If you found value in this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insights on Stoicism and personal development. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What Stoic practice are you excited to implement? Until next time, stay strong and keep striving for your best self.